Do you want traps in your tabletop role-playing game? Listen up, because this video is going to be talking to you about how to make traps and make good traps for your tabletop role-playing game. All we need is the B.A.N.D method, B.A.N.D. We've got to broadcast it. We have to have it add to the story. It needs to be narratively relevant, and it should be debilitating, but not deadly. Let's talk about each one of these in detail. First, broadcasting. Your players should not be super surprised whenever a trap goes off. There should be some foreshadowing. Something should be going on before the trap shows up, so it's not a gotcha. Tabletop role-playing games aren't a gotcha kind of game. If you want to play that, go play Uno. It's a much better gotcha game anyway. Broadcasting should come before the trap gets triggered. Not immediately before, but sometime before that. It could come in several different ways. They can see, if they're just dungeon delving, they can see scratch marks on the ground, they can see skeletons, they can see scorch marks, something like the trap has already gone off and now the adventurers are coming to this room and they've seen the residue of a previous trap already occurring. They could also hear tales from the town if they're in town. Oh, this dungeon, it's full of traps, watch out. Or it could somehow be foreshadowed by you hear clicking, tinking sounds before you. Or if you look at the Necromancer's hovel, the whole thing is a trap. I'll link to the Necromancer's hovel. You can get it on drive-thru right now. But essentially, the players go in to fight a Necromancer, and all along the way, there's a series of rooms full of zombies. Now, the players could interact with those zombies so they see the trap, or they could just go straight for the Necromancer. And if they do go straight for the Necromancer, well, then all of the zombies come out of those rooms and block their way out. So it is a trap, and it's clearly broadcasted to the players. So you could do that narratively. Next, it's got to add to the story. If this is a dwarven ruin, why are there traps in this ruin? And it should show how the dwarves protected their stuff. Maybe it's got special poison dart arrows because these dwarves used poison dart arrows. Maybe it has giant things that fall from the ceiling and smash the players because they were really great smiths, and this tells that story of their smithery. Maybe it's elves, and elves are using magic trees that can come to life and grab the players or throw them out. So it should in some way tell the story of the dungeon or tell the story of the world. It should add to it. It shouldn't just be like this random trap of a death ray when you're nowhere near the death ray. It's got to add narrative sense somehow. It shouldn't just be popping up in the middle of a forest. Now there's an obelisk with a death ray. Or maybe that adds to the story because now there's some kind of wizard who's setting up weird obelisks that kill things that come by. Okay, it should add to the story. Next, it should make narrative sense. Okay, why would there be a trap here? If this is a common area where the people are always visiting, there shouldn't be traps in that area. Now, if it's a dungeon and there's gold or treasure nearby and people want to protect that, or there's some kind of magic artifact that they want to make sure it doesn't get into the wrong hands, it would make narrative sense for this to be trapped. Same thing for a prison cell, right? Where they're keeping people there. They want to make sure they're stuck. You don't want to just have a random trap in the middle of the forest that doesn't make sense for anything else, like that death ray that I was talking about. Set up in the forest. Why is there a death ray here? It doesn't make sense. It's got to make narrative sense. Otherwise, your players are going to be scratching their heads and the broadcasting doesn't work as well. But if you can get that working, right? If you can get it to make narrative sense, if it can add to the story, and if it's broadcasted, all three of those things can combine together to make your game a lot better. Now, lastly, we have the D for B.A.N.D, okay? That is debilitating. You don't want your traps to immediately kill your players, or maybe you do, but you probably don't, because your traps should just be adding an extra narrative kink in the chain. How are the players going to overcome this problem of the trap? If the trap is sprung, right, now they've got a hurt player, or they're trying to get around the trap and prevent it from springing. That is another addition to the story. But if we have our trap, if it's sprung, you're dead, boom, game over. It's not nearly as fun to play through because once the trap is sprung, the game ends. That's the end of the story. We don't want that, usually. And if you are gonna have a super deadly trap like that, it needs to be very clearly broadcasted, all right? Probably have an NPC in your group, have them go through the trap and then just die. And now all the players know, oh my goodness, if we go through that trap is gonna kill us 100%. Which works if you're playing like a BX game and you've got a bunch of like followers with you, you've got hirelings and you can just send them in as fodder and then they all die. Or you're playing through a funnel, in which case all of the characters die. In those cases, it's fine. But normally, I think most people would benefit from having a debilitating trap rather than an immediately deadly trap. All right, so that's B.A.N.D. That's the method that you can use to make traps in your game. You want to broadcast it, you want to make it add to the story, you want to make it narratively relevant, and lastly, you want it debilitating but not deadly. You just want it to weaken the players so that the big bad or something else, the next thing, could come and destroy them. Well, I hope all your games are full of dread and laughter.